Hello, internet friends, and welcome to the Legion testing second pass of the Balance Druid. Leveling referred to, of course, as the Moonkin, Thunder Turkey, or Thunder Chicken, or any other derivative thereof. You can see the video runtime on this episode. I can't, as I'm recording this currently. So, strap in, most likely. Any DPS class, of course, is a whole lot more in-depth than a tank or a healer normally, because there's always a little more stuff going on there, right? So, there wasn't that many bugs associated with the Balance Druid. There are a couple things that just weren't working, or some tooltips that are incorrect or whatnot, but for the most part, everything is coming along very well. And my honest opinion, comparing it to the Warlords Balance Druid, if you hated balance in Warlords, this is like such a huge step in the right direction. The fact that in Warlords, you never controlled your resource. You played what the class of the game told you to play, right? You followed the little moving bar back and forth. That's gone. And we'll go through as much as I can. If you want to see more detailed, slower-paced discussion, please check out the entire VOD. It is linked down below in the description box, as well as my notes and the bugs and other ways to support this channel and keep me doing what I'm doing here, streaming, making YouTube videos, etc. And check out my channel guide, linked below as well, or on my Twitch page to find all the other testing I have done. Of course, it's all playlisted right here on YouTube as well, but there's more VODs if you want to watch 5 hours of Balance Druid, opposed to this video. So we're going to do basic spellbook. If it says talent on it, it's obviously a talent I can't talent away from. I'm not going to talk about them until I get to talents. But spellbook, rotationary stuff, show off some things, go over the artifact. Most of it in the artifact is just kind of supplementary stuff for the Balance Druid. And then we'll get into talents. And when we get there, there's like 4 distinct builds for the Balance Druid that can be on a fight-by-fight or whatever the encounter desires basis, or what your guild needs. And the builds are, there's a huge difference in inner skill cap involved there. And it was brought up during testing today that there are legendaries, the legendary items in Legion. One of them in particular will be super mandatory, most likely. And even that changes your reactionary gameplay in a way that will probably impact the talent builds more so than the builds themselves. So it's bonkers. But let's get into this, right? Okay. So, basic spellbook. You're looking at all the base spells on my bar right now. Everything else I have taken off of them. I'll put them on later. But your mastery is now called Starlight. The Eclipse bar and the Eclipse system is, for the most part, dead. It's gone. There are remnants, but your mastery is called Starlight, which increases the Starfall and Star Surge damage and the effect of your lunar, solar, and stellar empowerments by an additional 19.3%. Your mastery amount. So, there are 2 different things happening here. First off, it is increasing the direct damage of your Starfall AoE and your Star Surge. Star Surge buffs the Druid with lunar and solar empowerments up to 3 stacks. Both your lunar strike and your solar wrath, your single target direct damage abilities, gain a use of each of those. So if you have 3 stacks, you'd have 6 in total of the empowerments, but 3 for strike and 3 for wrath. Stellar empowerment comes from Starfall. So that's your AoE synergy there with Starfall, and your single target synergy with Star Surge. So it's very nuanced in a way that you decide, A, you're a builder-spender class, you build Astral Power, and you'll spend Astral Power on either empowering and enabling more AoE, or empowering and enabling more single target. Now, there are some back and forths on this, of course. Your only other passive you have is actually Astral Influence. Feline Swiftness is from a talent. Astral Influence is just 5 extra yards on all of your abilities. It includes your auto attack, so you can auto attack from 10 yards away if you want to, but it also will impact your other forms abilities too, their auto attacks or the ranges of them. It's kind of video gamey. I've talked about my opinion about Astral Influence just looking kind of goofy. It's fine from a caster perspective. You can just cast from really, really, really far away. So we're 45 yards away right now. Very, very far away. That is your range as a Balance Druid. The Thunder Chicken can rain astral nonsense from very far away. Or solar nonsense, you know, whatever floats your boat. So, you still have your form shifting. Your form shifting, however, there's a lot less you have from the form shifting. And as I will take a small break from the normal routine here, because this is a druid, your form shifting now is heavily impacted by the affinities you have here. You have Feral Affinity, which gives you a passive feline swiftness, so it's 15% movement speed, and it then also grants you Shred, Rip, Ferocious Bite, and Swipe while in cat form. Guardian Affinity gives you Thick Hide, where you reduce all damage you take by 10%. That's all damage as a passive. You'll also gain Mangle, Thrash, Iron Fur, and Frenzied Regen in Guardian form. Small point on that one is that you actually get Cat Thrash as well as Guardian Thrash, which are different abilities. Cat Thrash is direct damage plus a small dot, and Guardian Thrash is a 3x stacking AoE dot that has a small cooldown. And yes, you can utilize both of those, but I can't imagine unless you had like an oh crap moment where you needed to actually tank, would it be matterful? Because you're not going to go into both forms to stack a bleed that does less damage than both of your main dots anyway. And then Restoration Affinity, which gives you Ysera's Gift as a passive, 3% of your maximum health every 5 seconds, or if you were at full health, a random nearby injured ally will be healed instead. You'll also learn Regrowth, Rejuve, and Swift Mend. So unless you pick your affinity as a druid, this goes for all druid specs. So in each video, I'll repreface this, of course, for the druid. You have to pick an affinity to be if you want to be a Restokin, a Lunar Bear, or a Kitty Cat Chicken, or Thunder Cat, or whatever you want to call. Oh, copyright. Not a sponsor, also not affiliated with that show. So you get to pick which one you want to do. And in a way, they're all very good for the passives. The actives, though, and from a rating standpoint, really like Ysera's Gift will be the best one, because you gain another choice for keeping yourself alive in raids with Regrowth and Swift Mend and Rejuvenation. So, but that is depending on, of course, your need and what you are doing with your Boomkin Druid. Well, you still have all your forms. They just have a lot less abilities. As you see, the abilities you'll only get if you actually have... I have Feral Affinity right now. That's why you only see Swipe and Shred and Rip. Otherwise, they're not there. You'll have Prowl in cat form, but you won't have the other abilities. Teleport Moonglade. Teleport you to the Moonglade. I have been told after you finish your Dream Grove sequence to get your class hall, you will be able to teleport to the Dream Grove, which has portals to other places. You still have Sunfire. It generates 3 astral power on cast, and it is the difference in Sunfire and Moonfire is that Sunfire lasts for a shorter duration, deals basically the same upfront damage, less over time because of the shorter duration, but it is a 5-yard AoE around the target you landed on. So if you landed on this target right here, it'll actually spread to this boss dummy. This one's like a little farther away, apparently. So the stars you're following is a talent. Ignore those for now. So that is how Sunfire works. The stars, though, confusing me. Now, Moonfire, your other dot, there's no back and forth shenanigans anymore. Moonfire is a little bit stronger single target, also 3 astral power when cast, but it is a longer form dot, 22 seconds. It does say usable while in bear form. In bear form, you get the chance to use it as your ranged pulling. So the one thing to note as well is the pandemic mechanic of both of these abilities. Now, pandemicing dots, for those that actually have dots, is whenever you reapply the dot before its duration is run down, you can only ever apply 30% of the dot to the remaining amount. So Moonfire goes to 29 seconds, because in World of Warcraft there is a 0 tick, so it's 28 plus the 0, so 29. And Sunfire goes to 24 seconds, 23 plus the 0 fall-off tick. And that is important a little bit. That'll come into play with a talent later on, and just knowing that when you refresh your dot, you just extend the duration by only up to 30% of its maximum. Solar Wrath now was 6 astral power when cast, and you deal nature damage on a very short cast time. It's a very slow projectile, actually. I was told that happened in Firelands. And then Lunar Strike, which was Starfire. Now, Lunar Strike is a little bit different in a way that it generates more astral power. We did work out the math on this one, that the cast time is the exact same ratio that if you cast only Lunar Strikes for a minute or only Solar Wraths for a minute, it's the exact same amount of astral power gained. However, Wrath is much faster to cast, so easier to use during movement, but Lunar Strike has the initial arcane damage and then a small 5-yard cleave when it lands. You can only really see it if you're doing it right next to this dummy. You'll see it right there, the 23,000. Since our Pandaren friend has fallen. So Lunar Strike, the arcane single target, has a little bit of a cleave. Whereas Sunfire, the nature dot, has the small cleave. So they have a cool back and forth between the two abilities that there's two, one lunar and one solar ability, and they have a dichotomy back and forth that they parallel each other in a reverse fashion. So it's pretty nice, but that is your main core rotational abilities. And remember that you are a builder spender in a way that you have to build astral power and then you choose what to spend it on. So what do you spend it on then? Well, you spend it on Star Surge, which is an instant cast for 40, and it will give you a 1 stack of each lunar and solar empowerments. Now, these have a base amount of 20% increased damage to your next Lunar Strike or Wrath, but then it's 20% plus your Mastery. I have the Scythe of Elune off right now because it gets icky sticky because it has some bonuses as well. So that's your Star Surge. Star Surge also hits really hard. It hits really hard. But you're not going to cast too many of them just because of how often you can only hit so many Star Surges because of it's the spender cost. Additionally, you can use it on Starfall. Now, Starfall is changed. And many may not like this, many may love it. I think it's the better, way better choice due to the fact that, no offense, or some offense, Starfall and Warlords took no skill. You gained your charges randomly, instead of using them on Star Surge for a single target, you just hit a button and you AoE'd everything around you. It was tons of damage, it was great numbers-wise, but there was no interplay. You just put the buff up and you AoE'd everything. There was nothing involved in that. Now, Starfall in Legion is, of course, it's a drop AoE now on the reticle. 60 astral power. It looks fantastic. Woo! And I will actually mute my music real quick. It has a really great sound in the background. The sound of Starfall right now is kind of gross. But Starfall, actually, in Legion, sounds rather wonderful. There's that little chimey notes in the background, and then, of course, the stars falling on the targets. It's actually very pleasing compared to the weird, chunky nonsense you have right now. But Starfall also has another benefit. It also applies the Stellar Empowerment debuff to each target which is hit by the Starfall AoE, which increases the damage taken by Moonfire and Sunfire. So that means that while targets are being AoE'd by your Starfall, they are taking increased damage based on the same exact math. 20% plus your Mastery. That's why I have 39% right here. So it will increase the dot damage of your main dots during this period. Also increases the initial hit damage, of course. But you're mostly concerned about that as you can keep your Starfalls up and keep targets dotted in an AoE or cleave situation, or cross dot, or whatever you want to call it, that your Starfall buffs the damage done there. So as Starfall buffs your your dots and your AoE damage, so does Star Surge buff your single target. And you choose when that happens. You build, and you spend, and then you react to how your choice was. Instead of right now, when you just kind of like, follow the crazy bar. I'm going over here now. I feel bad for you. I was on your team for that not being a great change. But that is the core of the class. Other abilities you still have, of course, is you have your single target resurrection. You have your in-combat res, your in-combat res rebirth. You can remove curses and poisons on an 8-second cooldown to remove corruption. You have Prowl baseline, which will cancel your current form and go into stealth if possible. You have Innervate. Innervate has been changed. Only Restoration Druids and Moonkins have this. We've been a cooldown where you infuse a friendly healer Only a friendly healer with energy allow them to cast spells without spending mana for 10 seconds. The implications and the skill cap and the teamwork involved in innervates are going to be massive. Basically, whenever a healer is going to be using a throughput cooldown or massive AoE healing, stuff like that, then you'll have innervate rotation set up, which is still, it combines this, not every like person in a raid needs this weird raid utility thing. So in innervate, it's a very small, like, one-to-one, like, I give you this, and then you go crazy. But mana matters for healers in Legion, so this is a pretty big deal. You have Healing Touch baseline, which is your only form of healing outside of other cooldowns and such. You have Growl baseline, which you'll have to be in bear form to utilize. And your only major mitigation is Bark Skin, which has a new graphic as well. You heard that this animation right there. You actually have this new sound and animation going on where you actually kind of get barky and you have, like, your feathers are kind of all brown and wiggly right now and stuff like that. Your horns are too. Antlers, I guess I'm saying. I'm sorry. And yeah, you actually notice when it had not that weird, like, wreath that floats around you. But it's just 20% DR, 12 seconds, and it reduces stop spells from being pushed back while taking damage. You have Entangling Roots still, of course, breaks on damage. No new animation there. It still looks the same. It's like a vanilla graphic. Those straight lines, though. And then you have Dash, which will put you into cat form and increase your move speed by 70%, while in cat form for 15 seconds. The note that it is while in cat form, so if you actually change out, you do not get the movement speed. To be in cat form to the movement speed sprint to work. Remember that. And of course, there's Boomkin form, which we've been this whole time. Boomkin form gives you 10% increased arcane and nature damage dealt, 200% bonus armor, and granting a protection from polymorph effects. While in this form, single target attacks against you also have a 15% chance to make your next damaging spell instant. That is called Owlkin Frenzy, and that has a short diminishing internal cooldown where it can't happen all the time. I don't know if it ever really procs in PvE, unless there's, like, certain attacks that target and attack you directly, and then it might proc, but it's a PvP built-in thing. And of course, shapeshifting frees you of movement and pairing effects. Your only baseline cooldown is Celestial Alignment. 3-minute cooldown where your celestial bodies align, increasing the damage of your spells by 30%, and increasing the astral power generation of Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath by 50% for the duration of 15 seconds. So you basically moonfire yourself. And there's no other spell effect right now. It could be placeholder, but you gain a whole lot more astral power when you use your spells that it denotes. So you gain 15 per Lunar Strike and 9 per Wrath. So Wrath was 6, Lunar Strike was 10, so it goes up by 50%. This comes into play later on. I'm not going to keep harping on it, but this will actually be a big deal in your cooldown, either this or the upgraded version of your major cooldown, because, again, there are 4 different builds with Balance Druid, and they get a little dicey. All right, artifact time. Let's slap this baby on. The Scythe of Elune. There is power within the world. Power within the... Never mind. I can't speak, apparently. But it grants you the New Moon spell. And New Moon is, I think, the... I'm sorry I can't show you the actual tooltips for this. It changes on your bar and it changes the spellbook, but the tooltips I will read back from behind my head. New Moon, I think, is the single greatest tool to differentiate a skill cap between certain druids. Of course, Moonkin druids. New Moon is 15-second recharge and has 3 stacks. Each ability counts as 1 stack, but there are 3 abilities wrapped into this one spell. So, linearly, it's a 1-second cast, a 2-second cast, and a 3-second cast. The New Moon version is just light arcane damage, very quick cast, 10 astral power. It just goes, meh. It just like, on the target. Now it goes to Half Moon. It still says New Moon. Ignore that. It goes to Half Moon, which is a 2-second cast. Obviously, all reduced by haste. It does basically a little bit more than double the arcane damage, so moderate arcane damage. 20 astral power. You will shoot at a little astral puffed. Puffed. 20 astral power. Now you have Full Moon. Full Moon is 3 seconds. It is a ton of arcane damage. It is more than double the previous spell. And it actually AoEs 8 yards around the targeted impact area and grants you 40 astral power. That's 40. It is crazy. Here comes the boop. So you drop a planet on them, or a moon, whatever. But because this is a rotational ability, the core gameplay of the New Moon spell is never let it stack to 3, because you're wasting time for it to recharge, and always make sure you are gaining the astral power from the ability whenever you use it. But the interplay and skill cap with timing full moons, or timing new moon and half moon back to back for 30 astral power, and making sure you never let it cap, and you're always letting it recharge, and you're weaving it into your spells, and keeping your dots up, and working around your empowerments, is going to be the factor of how good you or anyone else is as a Balance Druid. Because it is such a powerful tool to snap astral power, to add, of course, damage, and to time abilities like stacking Starfalls. Oh, did I not mention you can stack Starfalls? Because Starfall is a targeted, ground-based ability, you can stack them. At most, with certain talents, you can have up to 4, but that third one is like fading away at the exact same time. So here's one Starfall. I'll drop a full moon down real quick here, and then, oh wait, what's this? Oh, well that's pretty. You can stack them. All the damage ticks on everything. There's no weird diminishing nonsense. It does not stack the Stellar Empowerment. However, if you layer them, like if you put one Starfall and then put some dots up and then build for a little while and then Starfall again and that first Starfall falls off, you keep the Stellar Empowerment debuff on the targets being AoE'd. Just keep that in mind. But New Moon is a huge deal, and it's going to be incredibly important for skilled boomkins. And when you use this and how you weave the spell into your rotation, oh, it's such a huge skill improvement over the nonsense in Warlords, and I hope you enjoy it, because I had a lot of fun testing. But the rest of the Scythe of Elune. We'll go over all your passives first, right? This Sky Wrath is supposed to be unlocked by default. I think they just don't have it's not supposed to be costing this much, right? There is a paragoning system of your artifact later on down the road where you can gain extra damage on everything you do, but that's not this. This is just a passive extra damage, but it's the first thing you unlock into your artifact. 6% more damage on Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath. Scythe of the Stars is 18% more critical strike chance on Star Surge. I bring that up interestingly because it looks like Haste and Mastery, or Mastery Haste, will be incredibly your 2 most valued stats as a Balance Druid. Critical Strike is like, I just want to cast more spells. I want my dots to have more ticks in them. I want to have empowered spells more often by casting more spells faster, and then those spells I'm empowered do more damage. So I think Scythe of the Stars is kind of a way to keep some extra crit on something, because you might not really want crit ever. Sun Blind, big deal. 5 extra yards on the radius of Sunfire. So now it is a 10-yard AoE, which hits all this dummy and this one, and it just misses this one. But 10 yards is roughly the same size of your, I guess I was going to say your, I guess I didn't mention that you saw a Solar Beam. I must have glossed over that, my bad. But this, like, 10-yard circle is right about what Solar Beam looks like. I guess yeah, it's over here. Because Solar Beam is target location, interrupting the target and silencing enemies within the beam. It's almost like a 10-yard circle, the Solar Beam. That's what I wanted to attribute that to. Maybe that's why I left it for later. Because when I was testing, I kind of felt like that was about the size of the area that the now new and improved Sunfire area of effect happens. So, it's pretty powerful. That one single unlock. You got Bladed Feathers, 75% more armor from your Moonkin form. So you actually have more armor than some tanks. Mostly a Blood Death Knight that I've seen so far. You got 15% more damage dealt on Solar Wrath. Rejuvenating Innervation. This Innervate also increases all healing you and your target do by 20% for its duration. So not only do you buff your healer to cost no mana for 10 seconds, they do 20% more healing, and then you do as well. Which will only really matter if, like, you take probably the Resto affinity, where you actually have heals. But for the most part, it's just another buff onto your raid utility spell of Innervate, which is super huge for 3-put spells. It's massive. Twilight Glow is 15% more damage by Moonfire. You've got Falling Stars, which this gets a little bit interesting now. So this increases the damage bonus from Stellar Empowerment by 45%. What this means is that your Stellar Empowerment now is stronger than your Lunar and Solar Empowerments, which of course mostly affect dots, but then your AoE now is even more buffed. You've got 20% passive, plus my nearly 20% mastery, and then times 1.14. Or 1.45, I guess, 1.145 for 45%, or whatever it is. Math is hard. It's 45% multiplicative increase of your overall total before this improvement. On my current amount, it's like 9. That's why you see like 9% right there. So it does heavily improve your AoE damage components. I was curious though why my math is all muddly there. If it improved the base amount and then your mastery was improved by it, or if it's your base plus mastery then times 45%. But it's, I don't know. It looks like it takes both of it together and then by 45% more. That's why you have the extra 9 there. Because I'll jump ahead a moment real quick here, and your empowerment is 10% more bonus damage from lunar and solar empowerments. So this is 50.9. But your Starfall is 59.3. So someone out there in the comments could do the math for me to figure out how this all applies. But I'm pretty sure they both apply after your mastery plus the bonus base of 20%. Light of the Sun reduces the remaining cooldown of Solar Beam by 3 seconds for each target interrupts. So if you interrupt 2 or 3 targets, you get, 6-9 seconds off the duration. If it's a 1-minute cooldown, so the duration before it comes back up again, the cooldown's a little reduced. Not a big deal. Kind of nice. Touch of the Moon is whenever you take damage, with a 15% chance to heal yourself for the same amount of your healing touch. It's the same amount as your healing touch, and cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. It's a free healing touch whenever you take damage on a 15% chance, and then an internal cooldown. So it's just extra free survivability, basically. Dark Side of the Moon increases the critical strike chance of Lunar Strike. This pauses me for a moment, because when we were testing, I was told that one of the very prominent math crafters for Balance Druid, Sios, they'd put together some... Basically, you never cast Lunar Strike unless there's 2 things happening. A, it's empowered, so go for it. Or B, you're cleaving multiple mobs. I don't know if there's a mount you need to cleave, but it's only a 5-yard cleave, so they have to be really closely together to make it happen. So Dark Side of the Moon gives you 50% more critical strike chance on that spell, because most of the time you're going to be building with Wrath. Because of the movement effects of encounters and bosses, you're going to keep your dots up, and you're going to build with Wrath, because you can always make sure you're not casting this gigantically long spell. Caveat to that, of course, then, is that, well, if Balance Druids run a lot of haste, maybe you can still just cast Lunar Strike. It just depends on the encounter. But because you're not going to be stacking crit, most likely, and if Blizzard kind of knew that, this gives you some more baseline crit for Lunar Strike. Whereas, again, Wrath just has more damage because you're going to build with it more often. And then that was the empowerment. And Sunfire Burn just has 10% more damage on Sunfire. So, golden perks. Echoing Stars, we tested this a lot. It is each time Starfall deals damage, it also damages another nearby enemy for a small amount of astral damage. This will never hit the target it's actually echoing off of. So if there are 2 targets being attacked by Starfall, this target right here gets hit by Starfall, echoes to that target, but that echo does not hit this target. Same applies to the other target. This target's hit by Starfall, it echoes, that target's hit by that target. So if you actually Starfall a single enemy, there's no echoes. You have to have other targets in the nearby range, which is 8 yards, to be echoed off of. But both of these targets would echo each other, thus, spreading the damage around, of course. But it's only another nearby enemy. Or echoes for having like 15 mobs. You would just get 15 echoes. Not 15 echoes or whatever off of each target. It just makes your Starfall stronger. And then in the side of that is that the power of Goldrin makes your Star Surge stronger. So your Star Surge, of course, is single target, like we went over. But this Star Surge has a chance to summon the Spirit of Goldrin, which immediately deals extra arcane damage to your target. So real quick, I will try to show off both of these effects. You can't really see. I did put as a bug that the Starfall echoes do not say Come on, Goldrin, proc for me, baby. Come on, Goldrin, proc for me. Don't do it. I mean, do it. There he goes. And then the Starfall amount you'll see in the combat log here for the real quick moment is that it just shows up as Starfall damage, which I kind of feel is a little bit bad on the coding perspective because it just says Starfall. But the smaller amounts are the echoes. But I wish it said Starfall and Starfall Echo, because it's kind of weird. You'll never actually know on the combat logging unless you know that you're getting just more Starfall damage. I wish it would say Starfall Echo, but it may not, but we'll see. Your last golden unlock is Moon and Stars. So, Power of Goldrin increases Star Surge. Echoing Stars improves Starfall. Moon and Stars is during Celestial Alignment or Chosen of Elune. It changes the tooltip automatically. Each of your harmful spells you cast, so harmful, not beneficial, will grant you 3% haste. Under the effect of Chosen of Elune, it's 1% haste, because if you know Chosen of Elune, it just lasts longer. So you gain haste while you're under your major cooldown. Either a larger amount in a smaller duration for Celestial Alignment, or a much smaller amount over a longer duration for Chosen of Elune. But the artifact overall for Balance Druids is really good. A lot of great bonuses here, and a lot of good little hooks to unlock and look forward to. Now, I'm going to go over things that are on the Druid that all Druids have to get them out of the way. First off, Renewal, it's Healthstone. Displacer Beast is your blink, basically, and a sprint puts you in cat form and makes you sprint. Wild Charge is your different forms give you a different ability, right? So different forms give you a different ability based on if you are in Moonkin, you bounce backwards. Shallow form is a leap forward. Aquatic form is a movement speed increase in water. Cat form is a leap behind the enemy. Bear form is a charge plus a mobilize, and non-shapeshifted is you bounce to a friendly target. These haven't really changed much. They've moved a little bit, but they're the same talents you have. We already went over your affinities. You have Typhoon still, so you could see Typhoon and poof. Typhoon is the Druid fart. Just a knockback. Mass Entanglement is you target a person, a target, an NPC, whatever, and it root that target, and then all nearby targets, 8 yards, are rooted as well. Breaks on damage, of course. And Mighty Bash is your single target stun in melee range, 50-second cooldown, usable in all shapeshift forms. Alright, that's your personal movement tier and your utility tier out of the way. So let's talk about talents. And a lot of these, there are going to be cookie cutter, but differentiating builds heavily. So you have Force of Nature, which I'll say off the bat that Force of Nature does a ton of damage now. And I'm not sure if that's still in balancing or not, but the biggest problem people have with Force of Nature, besides the fact that it doesn't summon baby moonkins, which it should, is that they never did any damage. So they pop out, they'll taunt their target, and they do a ton of damage. They're all hitting for 33,000. And in a full duration, they will actually accumulate 15 attacks. So, roughly, the amount of damage they just did here, at like raid level, might be 500,000 damage. And we'll get through this, of course, but the Moonkin doesn't have a lot of burst cooldowns. You have one major cooldown, and that's it. But Force of Nature, arguably, if the damage stays that high, is kind of a burst cooldown. It should still summon baby Moonkins, though. Damn it. But it's still better. If the damage is there, it could be useful. That's the bottom line. No more weird charges and summoning one at a time and all this other crap. It's just like, you summon a stand of 3 treants for 10 seconds. They attack enemies in the targeted area. They taunt them, and then they smart smack at them. The other tier here has Firelord, which is lunar and solar empowerments, also reduce the cast time of their affected spells. Sorry, there's no Chris Pratt pictures available right now. You can look those up yourself on Google. You control yourself, all right? Control yourself. So Firelord is just 8% spell cast reduction. It's not really haste exactly. It just makes your spells, while empowered, Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath, faster cast, which comes into play later on. Warrior of Elune, however, is a off the global cooldown charge ability that it charges you for the next 2 lunar strikes are instant. So this has a couple different synergies with other builds. Not only does it give you suddenly more astral power, also damage faster without having to cast a long cast time spell, also putting in more spells into a Celestial Alignment or Chosen of Elune. It also has a interesting notion to, which is kind of the subdued part, is to give you suddenly, additionally, more astral power. And that, coupled with, like, New Moon, for example, you can jump up quite a bit. But more on that later. I have Stellar Flare picked right now because this talent bothers me. Because it's potentially very good. But the best way to describe Stellar Flare is to now start working on the different builds of the Balance Druid. So Stellar Flare costs 30 astral power. It also does upfront damage and has a short cast time. It does a ton of damage over 24 seconds, and if you read that before, I can read it. Stellar Flare benefits from Starfall's Stellar Empowerment. We've already gone over how powerful Stellar Empowerment is with your artifact, and of course the fact that it's basically you can keep up lots of star falls over the long course of time. But Stellar Flare is going to be it's not going to be a single target spell, because you have to forego the use of Star Surge to put up Star Falls to buff the crap out of it. So how this works is that you're going to want to put up Star Falls while the buff is up. But then, well, it lasts for 24 seconds, so how would I keep multiple Stellar Flares buffed by Starfall? Now comes into the very interesting, I would say, second hardest rotation of the Balance Druid. It is the 2 to 3 target cleave build. So you're keeping War of Elune because of the aforementioned lunar power gains. Stellar Flare. We're going to jump down here to the Astral Power tier. And this is where you will make this choice. So Shooting Stars. Moonfire and Sunfire damage has a 10% chance to call down a falling star, which deals astral damage and generates 5 astral power. It's RNG damage and RNG astral power. That's all Shooting Stars does. Could be good as a set and forget it. Doesn't have a lot of interplay with how it works exactly, though. So, if you're using this multi-cross dot spec, depending on how Shooting Stars works out, this could be fantastic. You're going to be dotting stuff, and you're going to be putting out a bunch of star falls. So it could be fantastic. Because not only do your dots do more damage, you also get extra runic power. I'm not playing a Death Knight. You also get extra astral power to, of course, propagate you being able to cast more starfalls. But it is, of course, random. You have to make sure you're also casting Stellar Flares with cost 30. So the talents that I'm looking at actually that could work in this is called Astral Communion. Astral Communion is a 1.33 minute cooldown. It's a 80-second cooldown. It's worded funny. Where it's just a plop. You just click it, and you get 75 astral power. This helps smooth the rotation out to try to get these astral flares out on the board. Now, to make this work the best, you gotta like build up to it. The best benefit of certain classes AoE is making it difficult to happen. And the upkeep on how it can work has to be sort of a big deal. So what we were kind of theorizing while testing is that you want to kind of do a flare into this, into a new moon, and that. So you've got a little bit of buff time on that, of course. Then you have a new moon charge up. I needed to gain a little bit more power there. So you want to re-put this up there, and then cast your communion. Oops, there we go. Then you can Stellar Flare. Then you've got a moon charge up for full moon. Then you can hit your Warrior of Elune. You can drop these down. You can then recast your Starfall. You can then start redotting things with your other dots as well. But you can already see here as I can't do it properly because I've been testing this only for like 4 hours today. But if you are a much more skilled Balance Druid, this does have a lot of potential for crazy amounts of how do I make this work? And only being 2 to 3 targets is the only way I can think of making it work. And other than 2 to 3 targets, this would be impossible to maintain. Because there is a lot going on here where you have to continuously keep dotting stuff. You want to keep building back up to your starfalls. My brain right now. And Astral Communion gives you the benefit of having snap astral power. Shooting Stars gives you the benefit of random astral power. Your other option is Blessing of the Ancients, which works better in another build, which I'll go on next to, but there are 2 components of Blessing of the Ancients, I'll show you off in a moment when this cools down. Is that you can choose if you want to be blessed by a loon or on Shay. It's just a GCD choice. You become a solar boomkin or a lunar boomkin. The lunar effect is 40% increased solar wrath and lunar strike astral power generation. And the solar version on Shay is 2 astral power every 2.5 seconds reduced by haste. The more haste you have, the more guaranteed astral power you gain while in combat. You see right now it ticks up and then falls off on combat. The weird thing about on Shay is that eventually you have enough haste, it might feel better, but because it's so little astral power, they kind of have to make sure it's not too much, because if you're stacking haste, and if this goes down to like 1.5 seconds every global, you're getting 2 astral power, that adds up fast. Whereas Communion might give you the bonus of, hitting a Stellar Flare, Communion, Starfall, build, hit a new moon, Stellar Flare, Starfall, hit a full moon, Starfall again, refresh your dot, Stellar Flare. It gives you the chance to keep it rolling, but to keep the cross dot rolling, it's going to be very, very meticulous. And how you choose to work with your build here between Ancients and Shay, or Astral Communion, or Shooting Stars is totally going to be up to how you gear and what becomes the best, probably math-wise. But that's the Stellar Flare build. To add to the Stellar Flare build, you'll probably be taking Stellar Drift, which is 30% radius on Starfall. Additionally, it is 20% damage on Starfall, and the caveat there is you also grab a little bit of extra utility in the fact that you can move and cast inside your Starfall. But because you're running the Stellar Flare build of cross-dotting 2 to 3 targets on like a council fight, for example, Stellar Drift is going to be your go-to because it just makes your Starfall more damage, a larger radius, and if you need to move around while you're recasting your Stellar Flares or your rafts to build up anything, then you have the bonus of being able to move and cast. But that's like the Stellar Flare build. Of course, going over all of the Astral Power tier right here, let's move on to Incarnation. Incarnation doesn't really have a build around it, as it is just a more powerful version of your Celestial Alignment. 40% damage amp increase for 30 seconds and 125% additional astral power gain. Now, as I said, there's not really burst on the Moonkin, which is mostly true, unless you take Force of Nature. There is the possibility that your burst spec gets even burstier. So we're going to swap over here to a loon. We're going to keep Incarnation, and we're going to pick Fury of a Loon. I'm doing this one early because I might mess this up, and I want to make sure I explain what's happening here. Fury of a Loon is a Breath of Syndragosa-esque ability. 6 astral power on cast. 12 per second is then drained. 1 minute cooldown. Now, you call then a beam of pure celestial energy at the target location. I assume what you're about to see here is a placeholder, which deals astral damage every 1 second until your astral power is exhausted. So, you want to make sure that you have as much astral power gaining while you are beaming this death ray down from on high, which I'm assuming is still going to be a replacement graphic eventually. You cannot Starfall, and you definitely cannot Star Surge, because you are funneling all of your astral power into Fury of a Loon. And while Fury of a Loon is active, when you are not casting a spell, which is weird to redo, you can recast it at no cost to redirect the beam. You have to redirect it when you're not casting it, which is very, I hate this word, but clunky. I wish you could just do it when you're not, but it would probably be too powerful if you could just move it around and whip it back and forth. I whip my Fury of Elune back and forth. I'm sorry. So this, to me, you have to take Blessing of Ancients because you need Lunar Strike's generation. Lunar Strike under Blessing of Ancients gives you 14 astral power per hit, 40% more. Now, that does stack with Incarnation. So your Druid brain just turned before I could answer the question for you. Is that, yeah, Fury of Elune will be good outside of Incarnation, but during Incarnation, though, it is going to be ridiculous. Again, I can't make sure I do this properly because it's not going to happen. But, so you have to reticle target your Fury of Elune. You have to actually target this down. So we're going to plop it here and see how long I can keep Fury of Elune active. So we're going to go with New Moon into a Lunar Strike, into a Warrior of Elune, double Lunar Strike. We're going to then pop up this, and we're going to pop our cooldown here. I'm not going to have enough time. Nope. Ah! See? What you kind of want to do, which I messed up there, is I probably should have popped Celestial Alignment a little bit before then. I'll wait for my cooldown to come back up. When you're not having Celestial Alignment done, and I knew I'd mess it up in the live video, of course. I'll try it again. Is that I'll talk about the other abilities and I'll come back. Fury of Elune, you don't want to immediately go into Celestial Alignment because if you go into it with Fury of Elune at full astral power, you kind of want to give it some, like, a couple of GCDs because you want to let it happen as long as possible. So what I was trying to do there, which I did when I tested it on the live stream, is that I had Full Moon as the first use of New Moon, which I can reset here. And then what you do is you want to, like, cast a couple spells, and then use Warrior of Elune to double cast some Star Falls, and then you have to have more than 40 active astral power to give you enough time to cast the Full Moon. Then Full Moon lands, right? Actually, you probably want to cast your Warrior of Elune before Full Moon lands. So Warrior of Elune into Full Moon for the 40% damage amp, all of the astral power you'll gain from the Full Moon, and then you can just cast, you want to chain cast Star Falls, or Lunar Strikes in this case. Lunar Strike, rather. Not Star Fire, Adam. Wrong nomenclature now. And then you want to keep the Fury of Elune up as long as possible. And the Blessing of Ancients, Blessing of Elune is going to be the major point in sticking here. The synergy with Warrior of Elune is also beneficial. We talked about Starlord being good, but you'd have to build up to 100 slowly. You would then need to use Star Surges to build up charges of Lunar Empowerment, then only build back up with Wrath, and then go into your Lunar Empowerments, Fury of Elune, with those additional cast time reductions on those first couple of Starfires, or Lunar Strikes, rather. Dang it. So many Lunar, Star, Solar, New Moon, blah. But it doesn't look that beneficial to do. So, I think the best way to game this, going back to the Full Moon synergy, is to have Full Moon available before you go into a Fury of Elune full-on burn, which is for Incarnation. But I don't know how to make this easier, because it is not, as I messed it up, it's to take some practice for sure. But because you gain so much astral power from Lunar Strike, like, you don't get enough, oh god, that's annoying. That's Stampede, though. You don't get enough fast enough for a Solar Wrath cost, because Solar Wrath will give you, at a 1.3 seconds, only 8 astral power. 8 base, plus the additional bonus from Incarnation. But because Lunar Strike will give you 22, I want to say what the math was, that gives you basically 2 ticks worth of your Lunar Strike. And you're just fighting the bar at that point. Let me see one more time if I can do this right, and then we'll move on to the last build of talents. Alright, so we're going to do this right here. We're going to cast 1 Lunar Strike and then 2 instant ones. We're going to put up this and go into New Moon. Oh, it's going to fall off, isn't it? Oh, gosh. Ah, it did. Man, that is tough. I probably could just immediately go into Celestial Alignment, but I also feel like you're wasting some damage potential if you do that. Maybe it's only 2 globals, and then you can go into Celestial Alignment. Because if you immediately go into Celestial Alignment, then your first spell is going to just cap you back on your Astral Power. But again, Boomkin's much more versed in how this will work, will be able to do this and figure this out than I will. So, damn. All right. But that shows you, that's the hardest, build, is the Fury of Elune build. And Blessing of Ancients Elune, Incarnation with Warrior of Elune, and the Lunar Strike with New Moon timing, and keeping the Fury up as long as possible. You can see me test this out in the VOD if you want to go watch that. I actually did keep it up for almost 40 seconds, which is a long time. Without Celestial Alignments or Incarnation, you're looking to get to that 18 to 25 seconds or so. The bonus you get from Incarnation is so helpful, stacked with Blessing of Elune, that Fury of Elune becomes a super big 40-ish second burst window. So, more power to you if you can, keep that up even longer than that. But I obviously having trouble right now. So we're gonna start. Solar Drift is already done, so we can talk about Soul of the Forest real quick. Is that it? I can't talk about it right now. But Soul of the Forest is the passive in this tier, and its damage bonus of your solar and lunar empowerments increased by 15%. So more single target damage, a little bit of cleave on Lunar Strike. But you also have the reduction of astral power cost on Starfall by 10. So, Stellar Debris. This build is what this is the AoE nonsense build. So, Shooting Stars for more AoE on your, or more damage on your dots. Stellar Drift for more damage on your Starfall. And Soul of the Forest for more Starfalls. You could take Astral Communion with this. And this is the spec with Soul of the Forest, Astral Communion. You can actually get off 4 Starfalls, but your first one you cast is gone by then. But you can successively, continuously stack them. You can definitely have 2 active at one time, and you can almost get 3 at the same time. It's very, very tight. You get the last 2 seconds of your first one you cast. So Soul of the Forest is a single target bonus passive, as well as a better AoE. Your only other talent down here is Nature's Balance, which is you align to the moon and the stars, causing Lunar Strike to extend the duration of your Moonfire by 5.1 seconds, reduced by haste, and Solar Wrath to extend the duration of your Sunfire by 4.1 seconds, reduced by haste. Now, why they're reduced by haste is because you're going to cast your main spells faster anyway, which will just continuously restack them. But with Nature's Balance, it's very single target, so you basically never have to ever reapply your dots. So, remember when I said about the snapshotting mechanic, or the pandemicking, rather? The pandemicking of when you reapply Sunfire. It's not really a snapshot exactly, but it does snap up the duration. Is that Sunfire will no longer be... You can't reapply it longer with Nature's Balance. It only goes to the 24-second window, and the same is said for your Moonfire through Lunar Strikes. 24 seconds maximum is as high as it can go. Nope, sorry, that's 24 is Sunfire, 28 is Moonfire. So much going on with this class. It's such a better spot if you can't tell by the fact that I'm getting a little bit jarbledy-gook at the end of the video here. So Nature's Balance, plus maybe Shooting Stars, because your buffs will last forever, or you can take Blessing of Ancients for Blessing of Elune to give you more generation on your main spells, because you'll be casting your main spells more often than your dots, because you're never going to be reapplying them. You can take Soul of the Forest for your higher damage bonus from your lunar and solar empowerments. You can take Firelord to cast those spells faster, because again, you're no longer reapplying dots. But Nature's Balance build is very single target. The Stellar Drift build is either the cross dot build with Stellar Flare and Astral Communion or Blessing of Ancients or Shooting Stars. Or Stellar Flare helps the AoE build with Astral Communion or Shooting Stars and Soul of the Forest. Then you have Fury of Elune, which is very single target. It does AoE in the little area it puts into it. So unless you can beam through boss mobs and stuff like that, like if you tank things inside each other, it doesn't do much AoE because it's very small circle. But Fury of Elune is a super big single target bonus with Fury of Elune, Blessing of the Ancients, Blessing of Elune, Chosen of Elune, Warrior of Elune. I mean, if you notice this thing here, is that it's Elune, 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 Elune. It's kind of cool that that build, which you find out through, is all sort of named rather well, because you utilize all of the power you can get from Elune, taking it all, to give you this super big single target, nonsensical, crazy buff. And if you can keep that laser going, more power to you. But I tried twice in the video, and I messed it up both times because I don't know the exact timing windows of how many GCDs to put in and around that, but oh boy. I think Balance is in a hugely better place. They're having so many different build options and potential synergies and great bonuses from your artifact. This class has come a long way since I tested it for the rough edges back in December. It looks fantastic. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it through this way, say, type Moonfire with a different assortment of ones and exclamation points. Just Moonfire. Spell it however you like in the comment section below. Hit that like button, helps me out a great deal. Check out, of course, the video description box down below for the VOD, the bugs, my notes, other ways to support my channel right here on FinalBossTV, either on Twitch or on YouTube. Thank you all so much for watching it again. And I'm going to go take a nap like this. I'll see you all in the next Legion video.